I'm going to save any empathy that I have for people who are suffering under that guy's company rather than him being shot. I don't want people to be murdered. I would never advocate for murder. I would never advocate for vigilantism or extrajudicial killings. But when bad things happen to bad people after the fact, it's like when Henry Kissinger died, yeah, I celebrated. Absolutely. I'm not going to sit there and be like, this is a solution to the problems. It's not. People should be picking up on the fact that this is now at 52,000 laughing emojis. That's a lot of combined anger, frustration, and powerlessness being felt by people. You sick fucks. You sick lefties. All of you. Memeing yesterday. I saw the memes. I saw all the memes. I saw the jokes. I saw the routines. I saw everyone apparently was celebrating. It was like as if Donald Trump had gotten sick all over Twitter again. And the whole world was laughing. All of you, laughing at what had taken place. Aghast I was. As the only moral person in the room, I was able to get to my social media and talk about how murder is bad. Actually, if you didn't know that, that's my opinion, and I was able to talk about it and make sure everyone knows, and then call out all the other people, those radical extreme leftists who apparently were celebrating this whole thing. This is basically the sentiments that I saw from the Aaron Rupars and the Anna Kasparians and the Will Stancils of the internet, who were all just aghast at how the left was memeing. A lot of people got mad at Ken Klippenstein, who, by the way, was not even being that aggressive. What did Ken Klippenstein do? He posted a picture just so everyone knows. He was like, yes, so on the day of the CEO's death, I just want everyone to be aware. Here is the list of the percentage of claims that have been denied by every health insurance company in the United States. Leading the pack was his at 32%, meaning nearly 1/3 of every single one of their clients, their claims were denied, which... You understand how profoundly fucked that is. You understand why people might be upset at this dude. You understand why people might hate this man. You understand why Americans especially might hate health insurance companies. And like, while on one end there was a lot of people making all of those, like, you know, let's say edgy memes or whatever you want to call them, there was also so many sad stories yesterday where people like had to turn their comments off, by the way, because people again were jumping in being like, how dare you say this the day a man was shot in cold blank, blah blah blah. But they were like, I'm just going to tell you my own experience with this company, and my own experience was horrifying, and I was denied coverage, my child was denied coverage, and it was just like story after story after story where you're just like, this is so wretched. People were kind of aghast at the fact that on Facebook, when I first looked in the morning, the company itself had made a statement like, we are deeply saddened by the tragic loss of our CEO, and it had like 1,000 crying face emojis and 6,000 laughing face emojis, which kind of like really goes to show you, like, a lot of people look at that and they're like, oh, grotesque people laughing at a moment like this. By the end of the day, it was at 19,000 laughing emojis on the Facebook post. I don't know what it's at right now. Could be even more at this point. So there's a lot of things going on here, but for every single like liberal pundit or right-wing pundit who were just like aghast that people would have any reaction other than, what a sincere tragedy. This is a massive loss for humanity. We should do everything in our power now to make sure that we offer condolences to the families and all that kind of stuff. And then we're just shocked that people were not in any way wanting to do that, and were instead just like either celebrating or having parties or making memes or posting. These same people have been mostly radio silent every single day that there is just endless slaughters of children, or justifying the massacre of children, of Palestinians, of Lebanese children, of Syrian children, of Yemenis children. Like, they have never even feigned outrage or disgust, especially when it comes to countries that are directly being bombed with US-made weapons. And every single day, the rest of the world is logging onto social media, and again, looking at video footage, real fucking high-def video footage of mothers screaming while they hold their dead kids. And that disconnect between that and the politicians who are telling us this is about international rules-based order, Hamas is a terrorist organization, this is to defend your freedom, this is in America's interests, the numbers are exaggerated from the Palestinian Health Authority. I don't think that's true. Think of the 1,000 beheaded babies. Think of all the other grotesque things that Hamas does. We need to keep doing this. And people are just protesting over and over on the streets, doing letter writing campaigns. I myself in Canada have felt just like this grotesque separation with reality in our politicians, where again I'm marching in all of these protests, I'm writing letters, I'm calling my politicians, I'm doing everything that I can to try and make this shit stop, and at the same time you're having politicians be like, Israel has a right to defend itself. The security and safety of Canadians is directly tied to the safety and security of Israel and its ability to destroy and defeat Hamas. And it's like everyone can see the lie, though. We live with too much access to information now. You can go on social media, push a couple buttons, and you're going to see the massacre yourself. We can see what Gaza looks like now. You can't hide that from the world. There's nothing left. It looks like a fucking apocalypse. It's just like endless, as far as the eye can see, destruction. What it looks like when an actual like densely packed population has been having the technology and weaponry of modern day warfare just fucking enacted on it without prejudice, just completely devastating that part of the world. So that's the real horrors. That's the real atrocities. That's what makes me cry when I fucking wake up in the morning and go to bed at night. And then when it comes to a story like this, all of a sudden it's like, oh, excuse me, please, uncouth, a little more civility. Excuse me, no, this was a man. This was a man with a family. How dare you? How dare all of you? This is an unhinged, I say, response to finding out this news. And I think honestly, like, there was one post yesterday on Blue Sky that actually kind of put a lot of stuff in perspective, and it was by someone who was like, I have no love loss. I'm not here to say that I feel bad for this guy who got killed, the CEO. He was a rich millionaire who was predatory, who made millions and millions of dollars every year by denying children healthcare and families healthcare and making people's lives miserable. It has nothing to do with that. He's like, I'm just kind of more shocked at the fact that as a person, I'm not more horrified at seeing another human being gunned down in the street. And maybe it's because I've been spending the entire year watching children have their brains blown up, and people aren't really realizing the psychological toll that this has had on the entire world, and we're not actually taking any account for that. We're not like, politicians certainly aren't. There's not really a collective. This is kind of fucked. We all have like a little degree of psychological trauma, even if we are living in the wonderful comforts of the West, like that's kind of like the additional layer of how this shit fucks with me personally. And I can't speak for everyone, but I know that on one end, if I wake up and I'm just like crying uncontrollably from seeing again these horrifying war crimes and all that kind of shit, then all of a sudden that kind of like check your privilege moment happens shortly afterwards, where like, which I can turn off. I turn off my phone. I can go outside. It's a bright sunny day. I can go walk Chico. I can go hug my partner. I can go enjoy all the comforts of the West, and I'm not being bombed. I'm not starving. I'm not being starved. I'm not being shot at. I'm not worried about if I leave my house I'm going to be killed. And then I go and then turn my phone back on, and then boom, right away that kind of parasocial experience reignites itself, and then you are seeing all the horrors and atrocities happen to you or happen to them, and then you just feel like you're there for a little bit, and then you turn it off, or you scroll past it, or you see another story, and then everything keeps on going. And what exactly is that doing to society? How much is that numbing everybody, and how much is that taking everyone to a point where, like, I think everyone is getting perpetually more and more fed up with the idea of you need to feel bad and you need to feel empathy or use your empathy for the worst human beings on the planet, for the fucking Henry Kissingers of the world. How dare you mock the death of a man who was, again, such an esteemed part of American history? How dare you celebrate that? How dare you make memes about a CEO, a rich 20 million plus a year paid CEO whose, again, company profited off mass human misery? How dare you?
As you saw, there's no clear indication yet as to what the motive was for Thompson's assassin, and there still isn't at the time that I record this video. Although, if you look at the YouTube comment section for those news reports that we just...
Oh, I don't know if he talks about this, but if you didn't see, there was another part to the story that did come out. I don't know if I have the link. Apparently the bullets had 3 words written on them that are 3 words that are heavily used within the industry itself. and there's someone who showed a picture of a book that looks like it's directly tied to this. I'll pull it up if he doesn't
Watch.
bring it up.
A lot of people are making some educated guesses. For example, the top 2 comments on CNN's video say, "You make a lot of enemies denying healthcare to people." And another person adds, "Sounds like they denied someone's treatment, they died, a family member wanted revenge, and blamed the CEO." And on the subject of motives, some comments on MSNBC's video echo that same point.
Yeah, so UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson shot dead in Midtown Manhattan, masked gunman at large. Written on the shell casings were the words deny, defend, and depose, according to sources. And then here's an example of a novel using similar wording. Delay, deny, defend, why insurance companies won't pay claims and what you can do about it. Now, this is not direct evidence that this person was, specifically a targeted assassination of someone who is deeply entrenched within the health insurance companies. There's just not direct evidence of that. But it is, a new part of the story. And one of those ones where, like, I also don't think that the same people right now who are just trying to call for civility when, the uncivil are not allowed to call for civility. I'm sorry. If you're a U.S. politician who spent the entire year trying to justify the genocide of Palestinians, you don't have a right to suddenly go online and act outraged that people are suddenly celebrating the death of a CEO. Yes, murder is wrong. Yes, extrajudicial killing is wrong. Yes, I'm against the death penalty, all that kind of stuff. But every single time something bad happens to a bad person, or the day after, people celebrate, and then politicians are like, how dare you? No, this is uncalled for. This is barbarism. How could any of you? In a world where, barbarism rules, in a world where these same politicians are the ones who are, again, pushing a narrative that we're supposed to just sit back and accept that it is in the national interests of the West to fund and arm a nation that is committing genocide.
What would anyone have against the CEO of a healthcare corporation? Another person adds, one of the first times that the list of prime suspects would be in the millions. Yeah, and I have so many more comments to show you, but to their point, as journalist Ken Klippenstein points out, UnitedHealthcare denies nearly a third of all claims that they receive, giving them the highest rate of claim denials of all health insurance companies. And as this Ars Technica headline points out, they also use an AI model with a 90% error rate to deny care to people, which means that the Americans who pay them hundreds, if not thousands of dollars every single month aren't getting the health care that they're paying for. They're being ripped off. And it's not just bad enough that they're being ripped off. These insurance denials results in medical bankruptcy or death. And as the American Bankruptcy Institute points out, medical debt is one of, if not the most common cause of bankruptcy in the United States. And a report published by the Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that 14 million Americans, that's nearly 6% of all adults, owe at least $1,000 in medical debt, and 3% owe more than $10,000 in medical debt.
And just for perspective, I don't tell this story to brag or make Americans feel bad, but it's so any single American who's bought into Steven Crowder is a Canadian, right? Steven Crowder always talks about, to the audience of his Americans, hey, by the way, the Canadian medical system is a disaster. It's communism run amok. It's a complete fucking joke. You have to wait sometimes for years and years and years for an emergency procedure. There's all these triages. There's these long lines. The wait times in most hospitals will see you dead. If you believe in public health care, you believe in death. And so never trust any Canadian who tells you otherwise. So as a Canadian living in Canada, I had an emergency and I walked into a walk-in clinic, which we have all around you. Anyone who has a health card, who is basically citizen of British Columbia, can walk into a walk-in clinic to be seen by a doctor that day. I was seen by a doctor in less than an hour, and the doctor ran a couple tests, and after poking me near this area here and releasing the fingers, I was like, ow, and it was the release part that he was worried about. He's like, you need to go to an ER. So immediately after leaving there, paying nothing, by the way, after seeing that doctor and then leaving, thank you, doctor, go to the ER. The ER is like, okay, we'll run tests on you. I got x-rays, I got CT scans, they did all kinds of physical exams on me. They've realized that I had appendicitis, that my appendix was going to explode, and I had to take it out, or I was going to die. That was just the reality of this. I then had to stay in a hospital overnight. I was seen by great nurses, great doctors. I got surgery. They performed surgery on me. I then left. I've had follow-up exams. I've had multiple days stay in a hospital. I left. $0 is how much I paid for all of that. Zero. Not a cent out of pocket. I did not. There's no upcoming bills I need to worry about. There's not something that I'm waiting for in the mail where I'm going to get like a check or something. I'm going to have to look, oh my God, $50,000 or something like that. And again, that's not to brag. That's like, there's an imaginary line that separates Canada and America. You are the richest country in the world. It should revolt you. It should anger you. It should bring you to the point of wanting to destroy this entire system, to learn that other nations don't operate this way, that you don't have to operate this way, that they're not all just fucking beholden to a bunch of extremely wealthy insurance companies that play that game where it's basically like, how much can we deny? How much can we prevent people from getting back in their claims to make as much money as possible per month in this weird fucked up for-profit gambling system that is insurance companies? There's certain things in life that like we can determine and agree upon that, hey, by the way, we should take out the profit incentive. We should take out the profit incentive as much as we can from the medical system, because it can lead to, again, disastrous results, to people going into perpetual medical debt, to people dying, to all that kind of stuff. And I can't for the life of me imagine what it would have been like to have gone through that exact same experience, because I didn't have a choice. It was either I got surgery, got that out, or I died. Those were the only two options. And not wanting to die, I would have been like, okay, sure, fine, just like do whatever you got to do, and then afterwards get the bill. And then it's like, yeah, so that costs you about $40,000 with surgery and everything else too, and then the checkups, you're going to be looking at $65,000. You don't have to pay it all at once if you can't, but there will be accruing interest for a very long time. People in Europe experience, to varying degrees, very similar systems of having public options. And people in Nordic countries, for example, have very, very good medical systems, or in countries that are very, very poor in comparison to the United States, like Cuba, for example, a country that has been put under, the fucking sanctions and dominance of the U.S. empire for a very, very long time, but at the same time is still in their impoverished state capable of providing healthcare for their citizens. It's not something that is an impossibility for Americans to achieve, if only they could get past the incredible burden of these rich and powerful corporations that spend hundreds of millions of dollars on lobbying. And that's hundreds of millions of dollars just for this one company alone, by the way.
And if you're wondering why lawmakers aren't fixing the system, well, it's because these same blood-sucking insurance companies that rip us off and kill us have completely captured our entire government. In fact, UnitedHealth spent more than $5.8 million.
This came out the same day that I think Blue Cross said that it was going to put limits on its coverage for anesthesia during surgery. This was the same day that the CEO was assassinated. They said that they were going to, a story came out on More Perfect Union that Blue Cross Insurance was specifically going to limit the amount of, I think, either time or use for, okay, I got it. They reversed it. Never mind. I wonder why. Insurance company halts plan to put time limits on coverage for anesthesia during surgery. After sharp criticism from anesthesiologists, an insurance company is halting its plan to limit the amount of time it would cover anesthesia used in surgeries and procedures. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield said on Thursday it would no longer move forward with the policy change. There has been significant widespread misinformation about an update to our anesthesia policy. As a result, we've decided not to proceed with this policy change. Well, by update, you mean outrage, because there was this was a story I was going to talk about yesterday until the even bigger story came out that the other insurance company CEO got assassinated. But this is not the first time that I've seen insurance companies in the United States put forward, hey, by the way, we're going to have to try and reduce or limit a service that we provide simply because we want to make more money.
$1 billion in 2024 alone, lobbying both Republicans and Democrats. Their beneficiaries included Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and both the DNC and the RNC. So they're really making sure to cover all their bases. And as journalist Ken Klippenstein points out again, they're the top campaign contributor to dozens of politicians. So in case it wasn't already painfully obvious, I don't have much sympathy for Thompson, and I don't think you should either. In fact, you should save that sympathy for his victims, because this man became a multi-millionaire by profiting off of the suffering of working class people. And his company is directly and indirectly responsible for the
Olayemi put it really well when she was talking about the billionaires who got crushed into coins in the submarine, because obviously immediately there was a lot of people, pundits and a lot of right-wing commentators, liberal commentators, who were just like, how dare anybody celebrate the death of all of this was a tragedy, an underwater tragedy, and for you to laugh or make a mockery of this is grotesque, because at the end of the day these individuals did not ask to be murdered deep under the sea and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, the whole thing is done in such a way that it tries to almost trick you into constantly feeling guilty or bad for the things of what are essentially oppressors, people who exploit tens, if not hundreds of thousands of other people, who profit off human misery, who dedicate their lives to making the lives of other people shit and become and enrich themselves in the process, who basically do nothing to be able to try and help their fellow men, to try and shorten income inequality, any of that kind of stuff, while at the same time, when something tragic happens to them, all of a sudden it's uncalled for you to do anything other than solemn silence, please, at this time. Just respect the wishes of the family, and please, we need to honor this person's legacy. I think it would be grotesque at this time to bring up, maybe some of the bad things he's done. No. Now is the time to, again, show respect for multi-millionaires or billionaires.
The deaths of countless Americans. So I'm going to try my best to filter my thoughts throughout the course of this conversation, because I don't want to end up on the FBI's watch list or something, but just look into my eyes. You know what I'm thinking. Okay, we're all thinking it. If Satan chooses to recall one of his demons back to hell, you don't have to feel sad about that and offer your condolences and sympathies and thoughts and prayers. In fact, if it makes you smile, that's okay too. You're not a bad person if you react positively to the death of a killer. In fact, I'd say it makes you a reasonable human being who's justifiably outraged at the cruelty and lack of justice in this world. And guess what? You're not alone, because Americans reacted to this man's death in that same way. Tabitha Chow shared some screenshots of comments on TikTok that speak to just how Americans feel about this. Quote, "I'm sorry prior authorization is required for thoughts and prayers." Another person says, "Sending prior authorization denied claims, collections, and prayers to his family." Was his trip to the ER really emergent? According to his own company, my husband's heart attack wasn't an actual emergency, and we were out of $3,000, full deductible. It's crazy what my first thought was, and then I looked at the comments and realized I'm not alone in my thoughts. I just can't find the care. Maybe if they ask for pre-approval of my care, then after they pay their required deductible, I might be able to supplement some care. I can't even pretend to care. I hope he's looking up at us. Goddamn, there's more. My only question is, did the CEO of UnitedHealthcare die quickly, or over several months waiting to find out if his insurance would cover his treatment for the fatal gunshot wound? Sharon Zhang reshared an old post of hers about United Health, where she tweeted, "Good news, everyone. If I want to get out-of-network care this year, I only have to pay a maximum of $1 million out of pocket."
Oh my
God. I
God.
actually want to stop and explain this for international viewers who might not really know what she's referencing here. So when you buy health insurance in America, you are limited to a network of physicians that you're able to see. If you go out of that network, your insurance isn't going to cover that. And then you've got to pay for that healthcare out of pocket. And it is very, very spendy. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Just stay in your network. And on paper, that makes sense. But in practice, it's not so simple, because the doctor's office that's closest to you isn't necessarily going to be the one that's in your network. For example, my health insurance actually went up this year. So now I'm paying more than $900 for 2 people. But if I wanted to buy a more affordable plan, well, the closest doctor in that network that's more affordable is 30 minutes away from me. So in order to keep my primary care physician that I have now and continue to go to the clinic that's closest to my home, I had to eat the cost increase because it was effectively the only choice that I had. Now, that's not even the worst case scenario here. Let's say you're unconscious and somebody calls an ambulance for you. Well, the EMTs, they're just going to pick you up and take you to the closest hospital to get you the care that you need as quickly as possible, as they should. But again, the problem is that the closest hospital might not necessarily be the one that's in your network. And 2 hospitals just miles apart could be in 2 entirely different networks. In other words, you could be fucked over if you have a medical emergency, even if you have insurance. And this happens a lot. In fact, in 2022, 60% of ambulance rides were out of network, which means if they were lucky enough to survive, they'd face financial ruin. So going back to Sharon's tweet, her insurance company is kind enough to cover out-of-network costs so long as she ponies up a maximum of $1 million. After that, they'll cover the cost of everything after that first $1 million that she pays out of pocket. How generous of them. But I've got some more reactions. In response to Thompson's death, this person says, UnitedHealthcare has denied his claim for the ambulance ride and ER visit because the claim was filled out incorrectly. That happens. Beth says United CEO should have had his primary care physician recommend bullet removal surgery months ago so he would know if he was treatable today. LOL overruled says UnitedHealthcare CEO denied access to life. Rachel says UnitedHealthcare almost killed both of my parents. Good riddance, asshole. But let's look at some more comments in response to the news reports on CNN and MSNBC. So under the CNN video, people said, if you die from a preventable disease because your insurance was denied, that's murder too. Was this someone referring to the shooter ruined and driven mad by the US healthcare system? The richest country in the world with some of the worst healthcare. Yeah, this was bound to happen. This person says, and how many deaths is the CEO responsible for, I wonder? How many dying and suffering people did he profit off of? Very hard to have any sympathy here. Now on MSNBC's video, people are saying, are we sure that the gunshot wound wasn't a pre-existing condition? Claim denied. And finally, I wonder what he did to that man. I wonder what he and his company did to that man and his friends and family. And just so we're clear, this same sentiment was shared far and wide. Look in the comment section of any video and you'll see zero sympathy from Americans. But it goes so much deeper than that because Americans know that politicians are being bribed by these corporations and CEOs so that way they look the other way when these corporations rip us off and kill us. And some of them are getting a real wake-up call when they're sending out their thoughts and prayers to this greedy CEO, and the comment sections, they're not too kind. In fact, they're pushing back very fiercely and actually calling out the corruption. For example, Amy Klobuchar responded to the news tweeting, "This is a horrifying and shocking act of violence. My thoughts are with Brian Thompson's family and loved ones, all of those working at UnitedHealthcare in Minnesota." Now, as you can see, she was ratioed by the first response, who points out that UnitedHealthcare is a major donor to her, and others made similar statements. Beau Fort says, "Why don't you feel bad for the thousands and thousands of families that Brian has helped to put in bankruptcy while making millions and millions of dollars? How much does UnitedHealthcare donate to you, Amy?" Quinn says, "Up yours, Amy. You should be investigating that organization for crimes against humanity. That man murdered thousands of people, so don't you dare get on this platform and praise him or offer sympathy for his family, because they didn't have any for anyone else." Now, in case you were curious, she took more than $16,000 from UnitedHealth, but she wasn't the only one to face backlash, because Dean Phillips also reacted to the news, tweeting, "I'm horrified by the assassination of my constituent, Brian Thompson, this morning in NYC, and have his family in my prayers." And that response was met with the same sort of replies like this one. "Yes, all your other thousands of constituents just died writhing in pain from denials, but this special boy was assassinated." So as you can see, Americans are fucking pissed. And these politicians need to think deeply about why so many people are reacting to this news in this way. They're condoning.
It's happened before. Like, I don't know if everyone remembers Occupy Wall Street, but there was actual, like, press conferences done by, like, a bunch of, like, you know, Wall Street CEOs and stuff that were all basically like, you can't imagine the number of, like, death threats and scary things that have been sent our way. And a lot of reporters were like, you know, the inhumanity being shown towards multi-millionaire CEOs and billionaire CEOs right now is deeply disturbing and frightening. And I was like, is no one going to pick up on the resonance of the just, like, anger, the sheer anger that is happening right now? Like, clearly a lot of people are very, very pissed off with healthcare in the United States. You want a galvanizing moment that could actually get people to Pokemon Go to the polls? What about saying that, like, you are going to completely reform and change? And it's going to be a very difficult and nearly gargantuan, Herculean, impossible task. We've seen how hard it was for Obama. But you're going to go after the health insurance companies. You're going to advocate for Medicare for all. You're going to try to do everything in your power. You're going to make it a cornerstone of your platform. That's the kind of stuff that inspires people. That's the kind of stuff that would be like, yeah, holy fuck, I am riddled with medical debt, and you're proposing a plan to forgive medical debt on a large scale or something to that effect.
Come off as tone deaf, especially because people like Dean Phillip and Amy Klobuchar, they don't have that same sympathy for the victims of this CEO. And they
Joe Fox, thanks for resubscribing with Prime. Appreciate you. And Jake Toady as well.
Never offer those people who lose family members because of these companies the same condolences. When they both ran for president, as a matter of fact, they were against Medicare for all, which is the one policy that would have put an end to this nightmarish so-called healthcare system that we have in the United States. And people like them and their ilk, they actually had the audacity to pretend like they were the ones defending us when they were arguing against Medicare for all. And I say this because remember how during the 2020 Democratic Party primaries, when Bernie Sanders was pushing for Medicare for all, and they were screeching because they were talking about how his plan would be bad because it would abolish private insurance? Guess what? That's a good thing. That's what made his plan so damn good. We don't need private insurance. No matter how much they tell us we love the private insurance their donors give us and force us to buy, they will never trick us into believing it because we have to deal with these leeches ourselves every fucking year. So you can't convince us that we like something we hate with a burning fucking passion. It feels like gaslighting. Now, there's one solution and one solution only. It's called Medicare for all. Say it with me, Medicare for all. It would offer comprehensive care to every single American, regardless of their income or location, and it would be free at the point of service. Would our taxes go up in order to fund this system? Yes, but that still means a net gain in money for us since we'd no longer have to pay what is effectively a private tax to these insurance companies. It would reduce overall healthcare spending, and it would drastically improve healthcare outcomes. But don't take it from me. Jason Lemon of Newsweek explains, an analysis conducted by researchers at Yale University, the University of Florida, and the University of Maryland found that transitioning the United States to a single-payer healthcare system would actually save an estimated $450 billion each year, with the average American family seeing about $2,400 in annual savings. The research, which was published in the medical journal The Lancet, also found that Medicare for All would prevent about 68,000 unnecessary deaths each year. Quote, our study is actually conservative because it doesn't factor in the lives saved among underinsured Americans, which includes anyone who nominally has insurance but has postponed or foregone care because they couldn't afford the copays and deductibles, says Allison Galvani, an author of the study and researcher at the Center for Infectious Disease Modeling and Analysis at the Yale School of Public Health, told Newsweek. That right there is the solution. It is staring us right in the face.
But meanwhile, Musk and Ramaswamy have already identified using their new Department of Government Efficiency program where they can do big spending cuts. They said it includes cutting all of Veteran Affairs healthcare, eliminating the NIH, and ending all federal funding for federal prisons. Here's where you can get rid of all the monies. Do that. And maybe eventually you'll find more things to start cutting.
Every time we start to have a serious conversation about healthcare reform in this country, corrupt politicians swoop in and they crush that momentum at the behest of the health insurance industry, their donors like this individual. During the 2020 primary, when support for Medicare for All reached new highs and healthcare became the #1 concern for many Americans, well, health industry executives bet big on Biden in its war against Medicare for All, and that bet paid off. The conversation about Medicare for All was tabled once again, but to satiate our hunger for reform, Biden said that he supported a public option. But of course, once he was elected, we never heard about it again. So to go back to the assassination of Thompson, again, at the time that I record this, we don't know specifically why it happened. It could have been a scorned lover. But if the reaction to this news isn't a wake-up call for every politician in America, I don't know what will be. Because Americans are not happy right now. And a revolutionary fervor is clearly bubbling up in this country more and more as people begin to realize that the system is failing them. And healthcare is just the tip of the iceberg. But if politicians don't adjust to this reality and they continue to let billionaires and multinational corporations buy their complacency and complicity with our suffering, I wouldn't be surprised if actual pitchfork mobs start to materialize again. Because people have had enough. They're sick of it. And if this country refuses to do the one thing that literally every other comparable OECD nation already does, which is just care for the sick, Americans are going to continue to see how illegitimate our system is. And to be clear, our system is illegitimate. But we have to name that. It isn't broken. It's working as intended. It's called capitalism. And if that makes you feel uncomfortable, I think that you need to explore why that is. We've all been brainwashed into this system, and we've been told we shouldn't question it. But we should. People, they're not the priority in the system. Profits are. And unless Americans wake up and reject our capitalist system of exploitation, we're all only further enabling our own suffering if we continue to defend this system and support it. But Americans are starting to wake up, and I think that their responses to this news story is definitely evidence of that.
And what happens to this individual who committed the murder, who committed the assassination? What if he starts being lionized? What if he starts becoming a hero? What if he starts becoming a figure where people are like, oh my God, someone took justice into their own hands? And then the same American politicians this entire time who've been speaking about this issue stop noticing that, like, this game that politicians have been pushing on the world, especially Western democratic leaders, liberal leaders as well, who've been saying that, hey, by the way, we need to spend billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to support Israel because they are trying to fight against terrorism. And if they can defeat terrorism, it'll keep us all safe. It's a genocide. The largest international human rights organization in the world, Amnesty International, has concluded their report and determined that it is, in fact, a genocide. Democratize the use of that word. It is a genocide. Once you know it is a genocide, you cannot stand back and continue to simply be, you know, what about the whole, are we doing this in defense? Is this a matter of protecting America's national interests? There's a really good video that I downloaded. Hold on.
My name is Amos Goldberg. I'm an Israeli professor of Holocaust studies. For nearly 30 years, I have researched and taught the Holocaust, genocide, and state violence. And I want to tell whoever is willing to listen that what's happening now in Gaza is a genocide. A year ago, when October 7th happened, like all Israelis, I was in shock. It was a war crime and a crime against humanity. 1,200 people, more than 800 of them civilians, were killed in one day. Children and the elderly were among those taken hostages. Communities were destroyed. It was outrageous, traumatizing, personal. Like most Israelis, I know people who were killed, who lost loved ones, or whose loved ones were taken hostage. But immediately afterwards came Israel's response, and within weeks, thousands of civilians were killed in Gaza. It took me some time to digest what was unfolding before my eyes. It was agonizing to confront that reality. I was reluctant to call it a genocide. But if you read Raphael Lemkin, the Jewish-Polish legal scholar who coined the term genocide and was the major driving force behind the 1948 United Nations Genocide Convention, what is happening in Gaza now is exactly what he had in mind when he spoke about genocide. It does not need to look like the Holocaust to be a genocide. Each genocide looks different, and not all involve killing of millions or the entire group. The United Nations Genocide Convention explicitly asserts that genocide is the act of deliberately destroying a group in whole or in part. Those are the words. But there does need to be a clear intent, and indeed, there are clear indications of intent to destroy Gaza. Israel's leaders, including the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense, and many high-ranking military officers, media personalities, rabbis, as well as ordinary soldiers, were very open about what they wanted to achieve. There were countless documented incitements to turn the whole of Gaza into rubble and claims that there are no innocent people living there. A radical atmosphere of dehumanization of the Palestinians prevails at the Israeli society to an extent that I can't remember.
This was a protest done yesterday in the UK, where I believe the banner that they put up was large enough to be seen by, drones, airplanes, etc. That's how big it was.
In my 58 years of living here, now that vision has been enacted. Tens of thousands of innocent children, women, and men have been killed. Over 100,000 were wounded. There's a near total destruction of infrastructure, intentional starvation, and blocking of humanitarian aid. There are mass graves and reliable testimony of summary executions. Children that were shot by snipers. All the universities and almost all hospitals are gone. Almost all the population is displaced. There have been numerous bombing of civilians in so-called safe zones. Gaza does not exist anymore. It is completely destroyed. Thus, the outcome fits perfectly with the stated intentions of Israel's leadership. Lemkin, that scholar who coined the term genocide, described two phases of a genocide. The first is the destruction of the annihilated group, and the second is what he called imposition of the national pattern of the perpetrator. We are now witnessing the second phase as Israel prepares ethnically cleansed areas for Israeli settlements, and therefore I have come to the conclusion that this is exactly what a genocide looks like. We don't teach about genocides in order to realize it retrospectively. We teach about it in order to prevent it and to stop it. But like in every other case of genocide in history, right now we have mass denial, both here in Israel and around the world. But reality cannot be denied. So yes, it is a genocide. And once you come to this conclusion, you cannot remain silent.
That's also the findings of Amnesty International, who yesterday released their report, and it came at the same day again of the assassination of the American CEO, where I just saw an unbelievable outpouring of politicians feigning outrage and acting as if it's unfucking becoming for anybody to say anything bad about this person who had just been the victim of a targeted assassination. The same politicians who, by the way, are consistently trying to push the narrative that it's completely acceptable for everybody to buy that it's in the necessity of humanity. It's the international rules-based order to prevent, terrorists from taking over, that to continue to arm Israel, to continue to provide them with weapon systems, to provide them with funding to buy American weapons, for Canada to produce a lot of the technology that they then ship to America, that then get shipped to Israel to be used in their same targeting guidance systems where they drop their thousands and thousands and thousands of bombs upon civilians. It's a genocide. Amnesty International has declared it a genocide. Our damning findings must serve as a wake-up call for the international community. The leading human rights group Amnesty International said late Wednesday what the United Nations experts, national leaders, and historians have been arguing for months, that Israel's massive assault on Gaza amounts to the crime of genocide against the Palestinian population. Amnesty, which had been sharply criticizing the U.S.-backed war, but until Thursday stopped short of labeling it genocide, details its findings and conclusion in a sprawling new report titled, "You Feel Like You Are Subhuman: Israel's Genocide Against Palestinians in Gaza." The 296-page document features interviews with survivors, witnesses of Israel's large-scale campaign of bombing, displacement, arbitrary detention, the destruction of Gaza's agricultural land and civilian infrastructure, interviews supplemented by an analysis of satellite imagery, video footage, and other visual evidence. Israeli authorities, the group said, did not respond substantively with any of its inquiries between October 2023, when the assault on Gaza began, in the wake of the deadly Hamas-led attack in Israel in October 2024. The report does, however, include quotes from Israeli officials and soldiers, including one who declared, "There is no innocence in Gaza." Through its research findings, legal analysis, the report states Amnesty International has found sufficient basis to conclude that Israel committed, during the 9-month period under review, prohibited acts under Articles 2, A, B, and C of the Genocide Convention, namely killing, causing serious bodily or mental harm, and deliberately inflicting upon Palestinians in Gaza conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction in whole or in part. Amnesty has said it also found sufficient basis to conclude that these acts were committed with specific intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza, as such, who form a substantial part of the Palestinian population. Agnes Callamard, Amnesty's Secretary General, said in a statement that her organization's report demonstrates that Israel has carried out acts prohibited under the Genocide Convention with the specific intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza. Month after month, Israel has treated Palestinians in Gaza as a subhuman group, unworthy of human rights and dignity, demonstrating its intent to physically destroy them. Our damning findings must serve as a wake-up call for the international community. This is genocide. It must stop now. And not just for the international community, but also for global participation within, say, corporations, for example, that are willing to continue to do business in Israel, that are willing to continue to profit off Israeli investment funds, technology companies, food and beverage companies, companies that use illegal settlement manufacturing in the West Bank. This has to be now a moment where, once it's established and once it's accepted that this is a country that is currently engaged in genocide, that directly supporting them makes you complicit. That includes corporations, that includes companies, that includes politicians who are willing to continue to try and say that this is not a genocide, Israel has a right to defend itself, etc. Yes, participate in boycotting, divesting, sanctioning. Every single time that you shop, you have an ability to, again, vote with your dollar in that respect. But, in reaction to the backlash against this, again, it seems completely and utterly absurd for the same politicians who have been trying to downplay the severity of what is happening to millions of people in Palestine by saying that if you were to use, say, the laugh emoji, that you're a monster in this regard.
If you're wondering how Americans feel about their private healthcare system, well, you found the right video, because I'm going to go over some of the reactions to the targeted hit on the UnitedHealthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, which has been so overwhelming that they even had to take down a Facebook post about
Oh, they took it down.
So let me first start with the news in case you missed it. UnitedHealthcare CEO fatally shot outside New York City hotel in premeditated, pre-planned targeted attack. So
Oh no, they haven't. Well, I mean, if they took it down, it's back up. It's at 52,000 laughing emojis as of right now. As of 2:07 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 52,000 laughing emojis. That is outrageous. Let me get the actual numbers here for everybody. 52,000 laughing emojis, 2,000 crying emojis, and then 1.9 for the hugging of the heart emoji. But 52,000 for the laughing emoji. That, again, it was like 6,000 yesterday, and those other numbers haven't changed much. Then it was 19, and now it's 52,000. That's just Jesus.
his wife, Brian Thompson's wife, Paulette Thompson, said he had been receiving threats. Quote, there had been some threats. Basically, I don't know, a lack of coverage. Speaking on a lack of healthcare coverage. I don't know the details. I just know that he said there were some people that had been threatening him. So let's be clear, in case this shouldn't have to need to be said. But let me say it anyways. Killing people is wrong. Don't shoot people. All right? I hope we're all on the same page there. The reason I'm showing you these reactions here is to help explain why something like this can happen in a system where people feel so powerless. This is simply cause and effect. So, this gets to, just as an aside here, people like Bernie Sanders, that CEOs, especially healthcare CEOs, CEOs, billionaires, they hate Bernie Sanders because they're trying to limit their power in society. He wants to bring more power back to the people, less power to those at the top. And they hate him for it. But they should be embracing him because this is the alternative.
Yeah, I'm posting
Events
it on
like
Blue
this
Sky. It's
are
still
more
up.
likely to happen in a system where people feel so powerless. So let me get to actually first, this news came out later on. The words, quote, deny, defend, and oppose appeared on shell casings recovered from the scene. So they're examining whether the words relate to a possible motive involving insurance companies and the responses to claims. Again, we still don't know for sure why this happened, but even apart from that, for me, what's more interesting is the reaction to it, and it really just showcases how broken the American healthcare system is. And this is somebody speaking as a Canadian who never thinks about healthcare until I need it. I don't argue with insurance companies. We don't have health insurance companies. We do for some extended coverage, but
I was going to say for extended coverage we do, and like I'm very privileged in that I get it as part of my wife having a job as an architect, so that's like where I get my extended coverage for people who need it. So I'm still someone who's fighting here in Canada. Like I'm really happy that in the past couple of years we've achieved getting now dental coverage. That's important. Getting pharmacare coverage. That's important as well. Like it's not as if everything is perfect, and I'm not going to sugarcoat the fact that for some certain things in the triage system you might have to wait longer. That's entirely true. But make no mistake, like I said, my first-hand experience like a year ago, having to go from being like, I feel really fucked up, something's wrong, to going to a walk-in clinic, which you can go to anywhere. As long as you are, as long as you have a healthcare card, you can go into any walk-in clinic. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be like, oh, this one is only available to people who follow under Category X. There are walk-in clinics everywhere across the city, so you walk to your closest one, or you look online and find the one that has the shortest wait time. I was seen almost immediately. A doctor started, probing around and found out that I should probably go to an ER. Got to an ER. Got fucking multiple tests, exams, x-rays, CRT scans, all that kind of shit, got surgery, had my life saved, walked out, and spent days in the hospital and didn't pay a dollar. Didn't pay $1. I didn't think about it at once. I wasn't sitting there being like, holy fuck, how much is this going to cost? Holy fuck, what's going to happen if I don't? Holy fuck. And like, it breaks my heart to hear the amount of stories out of America where you're just like, tale after tale, where it's parents who have to decide whether or not they can either pay rent or potentially take one of their kids to see a doctor for a cough that they have. People who, their parents are old and they can't afford a potential surgery because it could be life-saving, but at the same time, they simply just can't afford being indebted for the rest of their lives in order to get that surgery for their parents because their insurance isn't going to cover it all of a sudden. I mean, that's fucked.
Not something that you need. It's just nothing I think about. Like, if I need the doctor, I go to the doctor. If I need healthcare, I get the healthcare. I don't pay out of pocket. It just happens. It's through my taxes. I don't think about it. It's just how it works. It's much different for Americans, especially looking at some of these reactions and some of the like claims being denied, people being denied coverage while they're laying on the table to get surgery. I'll get to I think that example later on. Like, there are so many examples that people are sharing of how this system has destroyed them, and those are the people that have survived. So let me get to there have been many headlines like this now. Axios writing, UnitedHealthcare CEO's killing unleashes social media rage against insurers. Let's start with this. Doug Henwood shared this.
Am I going to talk about the Hawk Tua? Yes, that is the next story coming up. I'm trying to cover some important stuff first before we talk about the Hawk Tua cryptocurrency scam.
Image from Facebook.
I know you're all waiting for the important news that matters.
United Healthcare Group shared their reaction to Brian Thompson, and if you scroll down, 19,000 people,
52,000 now,
put a laughing face on the news. That's compared to 1.9 with the crying face, 1.6 with
Diggy Soze says, I racked up $90,000 at only 12 years old from an emergency surgery because it was deemed a pre-existing condition. That bill was paid in cash and will never financially recover. That's grotesque. Like, that is so much more deeply sick than fucking the people who are like, how dare you make a joke? How dare you joke online? What is wrong with you? That's unhinged. This man had a family, all right? He was shot in cold blood. How dare you? That's grotesque. And it's like, no, the stories like that are grotesque. The private health insurance system is fucking grotesque. I'm gonna save any empathy that I have for people who are suffering under that guy's company rather than him being shot. I don't want people to be murdered. I would never advocate for murder. I would never advocate for vigilantism or extrajudicial killings. But when bad things happen to bad people after the fact, it's like when Henry Kissinger died, yeah, I celebrated. Absolutely. I'm not going to sit there and be like, this is a solution to the problems. It's not. People should be picking up on the fact that this is now at 52,000 fucking, laughing emojis. That's a lot of combined anger, frustration, and powerlessness being felt by people who are expressing it in the form of just clicking on a fucking Facebook post to join in on the amount of people who are laughing at the United Health Group's post right now. And like, politicians should be picking up on this, not being like, should we pass a bill to protect and provide federally funded security for health insurance CEOs because it's in the nation's interest, which is where, like, as sick and fucked up as the world is, you could see something like this going where it's like, oh, by the way, they're calling an emergency meeting. Apparently they're taking this very, very seriously. This is a life-changing thing. They're now going to be using federal funding to be able to pay us a bill to provide additional security for every single CEO so this never happens again. Where it's like, no, but what? Aren't you looking at what's actually taking place here? You should be looking at that hopelessness, that anger, that frustration, that rage that you are seeing online, and recognize that people are fucking fed up, especially Americans, with this private health insurance fiasco.
Hugging a heart. They eventually deleted this Facebook post. I think it got to like 21,000 likes or 21,000 laughing faces before they deleted it. Giving you an idea.
It's still up now, or they put it back.
Little sympathy people have for the health insurance industry. United Health in particular is incredibly, you could argue is the worst among them. One example of that, they use an AI model with 90% error rate to deny care. That was according to a lawsuit. The lawsuit argues that United Health should have been well aware of the blatant inaccuracy of NH Predict. That's their AI model. NH Predict estimates based on its error rate, though few patients appeal coverage denials generally.
Did Elon delete his tweet? I don't know. I got sent that tweet by Dave, but that was a screenshot, so I don't know if he took it down.
Reason for that is just who the hell wants to be on a phone, or who has the time even to be on a phone for hours arguing with an insurance company in an argument that you're probably going to lose anyways. So most people just eat the cost, and that's part of the reason why the most common form of bankruptcy in the US is medical bankruptcy, which is practically unheard of in countries with universal healthcare systems. But they're going to right here. When United Health members appeal denials based on NH predicts estimates through internal appeals processes or through the federal administrative law judge proceedings, over 90% of the denials are reversed, the lawsuit claims. This makes it obvious that the algorithm is wrongly denying coverage. So they use this broken AI model that they know most people are not going to try and appeal anyways because they don't want to deal with the system, making money off the backs of sick people who are then going bankrupt, many of them, because of these sorts of costs. It is just that this isn't just an issue with this company. This is a rot at the heart of a private system where the motive of a private insurance company isn't to help you, it's to make money, it's to increase shareholder value. That is why, just generally, one of the big benefits of a single payer system or some kind of public system is that there's no profit motive. Your tax money or whatever you're paying through your taxes is going to be less compared to what you pay to private insurance because you are taking the profit motive out of it. That's why places like whether it's Canada, countries in Europe, they pay less through their taxes than they do to a private insurance. Let me rephrase that. They pay less overall in healthcare costs because
I didn't know about the AI part. I mean, it makes sense that you'd have algorithms trying to determine what is the most economically advantageous way to get the least amount of people the most amount of money, because that's basically your entire financial model there, right? How does your company operate? Well, we take in a monthly sum from our clients, and then whenever one of those clients has a problem, we have to then pay to help fix them. And basically the idea being that as long as they keep paying us and they don't have problems, then we just keep making money. But if we have to pay out that money back to help them, then we make less money. So it's in our best interest to basically figure out a way to try and deny as many claims as possible. And this one CEO's company happened to be the leader in that.
there is no profit motive, and they get more coverage. So more coverage, paying less. There's no in-network, out-of-network. Everyone's under the same network. It's a single system. There are just so many benefits, and I've discussed these benefits again and again about a single payer system or a public system, not having to worry about losing your job or being able to make the decision to leave your job and maybe be self-employed and not worry about losing healthcare coverage because you still have healthcare guaranteed to you because it's a public system. So there's countless benefits. Not having to argue with insurance companies. I've never in my life had to talk to an insurance company. There is just so many benefits that it can be hard to summarize them all now. But nearly 60% of those surveyed by Kaiser Family Foundation last year said they'd experienced problems with their health insurance, such as denied claims or difficulties with provider networks. Among insured adults who saw a doctor more than 10 times in the previous year, nearly one-third experienced problems with requirements that the health insurer sign off on an item or service before it's covered. Just endless issues with health insurance companies. There are 1,000 examples like this of individual examples. So UnitedHealthcare tried to deny coverage.
Slain UnitedHealthcare CEO was sued by a firefighter's pension fund in March for insider trading and fraud. The suit alleges that he stole $15 million in company stock while failing to disclose a Department of Justice investigation into the company.
To a chronically ill patient.
Ken Klippenstein has been just on fire in the past 24 hours. And then Ken also made a post that was I'm so happy I don't have a boss because he can actually do the kind of reporting that he's doing. But as he's trying to really just kind of focus everyone's attention, who's immediately we can't say anything bad about a person. He was just murdered. And then it's was he a very bad person though? Because if he was, I just want to point out all of the bad things that he's done. And I think that terrifies a lot of folk who are but if you do that, then people will celebrate when all bad people die or something. Or what if that's going to promote violence or instigate violence? And it's no, I'm not trying in any way to instigate violence. I am flat out saying, Ken Klippenstein had to make a post that was murder is wrong. Yes, that goes without saying. But are you surprised at the reaction to this?
Fought back, exposing the insurer's inner workings. So this is a rare case where a patient actually fought back. This is from about a year ago. It's from ProPublica. They go on to write here, United flagged McNaughton's case as a high dollar account, meaning it was costing them money. and the company was reviewing, or I should say, costing them more than the average person. I'm sure it wasn't costing them money; they still make massive profits. But the company was reviewing whether it needed to keep paying for the expensive cocktail of drugs crafted by a Mayo Clinic specialist that had brought McNaughton's disease under control after he'd been through years of misery. At one point, court records show United inaccurately reported to Penn State and the family that McNaughton's doctor had agreed to lower the doses of his medication. Another time, a doctor paid by United concluded that denying payments for McNaughton's treatment could put his health at risk, but the company buried his report and did not consider its findings. The insurer did, however, consider a report submitted by a company doctor who rubber stamped the recommendation of a United nurse to reject paying for the treatment. So, burying facts about the patient as a way to benefit their bottom line. And this is one person. One person that was able to expose this. Think of how often this happens. It is an absolutely insane system, but it is the natural conclusion of a system where the motive is profit, not healthcare coverage. Also, doesn't hurt that their lobbying since 1998 has been over $100 million in lobbying the U.S. government. This, the way we're socialized to see violence exclusively is interpersonal and not.
I saw this post. I think it's really good. Policies that create poverty and kill, structural violence, institutional violence is very deliberate. The same with panics about crime, shoplifting versus how much corporations steal from every single one of us. In just raw numbers, like when you look at it, and I love how radicalized, Mellon's becoming, because I think Anthony Fantano just recently put this out there. It's not a new stat, by the way. Any lefty will show it to you, but it's probably new for a lot of people who are in his audience who are just kind of like, wait, why are you posting about this kind of stuff? So he posted this. Wage theft. When employers steal from employees. Other types of theft. So in wage theft, minimum wage violations, and this is all from one single year of data, $23.20 billion. Minimum wage violations. Overtime violations, $8.8 billion. Rest break violations, $4 billion. Off the dock violations, $3.2 billion. Total for all larceny, $5.3 billion. All burglary, $4.1 billion. Auto theft, $3.8 billion. We never in mainstream media, never in cop shows. There's no Rush Hour 4 or 5 where they're going after the fucking bosses who are scamming. Like, I get it. It's not as sexy as people breaking and smashing into cars or people stealing stuff to buy drugs or the looting that, whatever story Jank and Anna are currently obsessed with that involves some kind of evil immigrant doing evil things. That kind of stuff, obviously, is going to be a lot more, visually entertaining and bring more people in and clicks, especially if you can vilify a minority group in the process, right? But this is like where the majority of theft is taking place. But you don't think about it in the same way. Because, like, it's one thing to think, like, okay, so when you say wage theft, what do you mean? Well, in a lot of cases, bosses are underpaying or not paying the full hourly wage that they're supposed to pay their employees. They're not giving them the benefits that they've been promised.
Yeah.
They're not giving them a whole bunch of things like overtime pay. That's another really big one. They're withholding their wages and then trying to use tips in exchange for that. That's another example of that. These are other examples: off the clock violations, rest break violations. When you're supposed to be on your break, you're supposed to be given a certain amount of time. Say you were given 25 to 30 minutes per break, but they after 10 minutes like, hey, you got to come back, sorry, we need you right now, I'm sorry, yeah, just like, well, we'll sort it out later, and then you don't get money for that. Well, all that shit adds up because you are exchanging your labor, you're exchanging your work for money. So it doesn't feel the same thing as someone walking by you on the street and then all of a sudden bumping into you and then grabbing your wallet and then walking away. In that case, you're like, whoa, I've been robbed, they stole the money out of my pocket. That's fucked. That's happened to me before. I've had people in the streets of Barcelona, by the way, they've stolen my wallet, they've stolen my phone before. I've been pickpocketed. I've had my car when I was a teenager broken into. I've been robbed. So yeah, that immediately feels like, holy shit, I've been stolen from. But in these cases, you're still being stolen from. Someone is stealing what they owe you. They're like, hey, I'm going to pay you $10 an hour. Okay, you worked X amount of hours. Okay, I bet you don't tabulate every square fucking extra second, but my computer sure does. And it finds out that if I just round up each hour by an extra 15 minutes, hey, across the board for all my employees, I get an extra $1,000 a month. And none of them really notice it. So that's just what we're going to do. I'll just sit back, and then maybe you don't notice the extra 10 minutes here, the extra 20 minutes there, the extra 10 minutes here. But all of that is your labor. All of that is money that they're supposed to be paying you for your work. And then at the end of the day, that's theft. That is the majority of theft. That is where all of the stealing is going down. This is it. You never hear about it. No one on the media talks about this. No one in fucking movies. There's no plots about this. There's not Law and Order episodes about this. Maybe there's one or two, but for the vast majority, it's the fucking the semen spreader, the mad inseminator who's just running around spraying cum on everything. It's like, oh, it's a good thing we were able to discover the semen on the walls so we can run the DNA on him and catch the mad semen spreader and stuff like that. Because yeah, okay, fine, that's a much more interesting story than have you double checked your pay stubs? Did you look at the amount of hours that you did last week when you were looking at your hours? Did you look at your overtime pay? You're supposed to get time and a half, especially for the holidays. Did you double check that? I know it's a lot of extra work for you to have to try and do something your boss should be doing of his own, like, accord. It's his job to actually properly pay you, but he's not. So did you check your books? Dung, dung, dung. Okay, that's not a very interesting episode, I'll grant you, but that's where the majority of theft is taking place. That's just reality. Why do leftists bend over backwards to make excuse for street criminals? Leftists don't, though. No leftist is like, I'm on the side of the guys smashing into your cars. Them's my people. That's the petty fucking proletariat right there, or as the proper term is, the lumpen proletariat, or the lumpen proles. Yes, I am here to advocate for violent offenders, people who punch grandmothers, people who assault people who break into your cars, people who smash into your houses. And if you speak up against that, you're a racist. That's the left, all right? That we have to stand up for those. No. Like, any leftist will tell you that sucks when it happens. It's happened to me personally. I've been robbed before, so yeah, it's not a fucking fantastic feeling, and no one wants to have their lives put in danger. But do you want to reduce that? Do you want to reduce the amount of people who are stealing from your cars? All right. What can we do to start reducing the amount of people who break into homes, who break into cars, who steal off people's properties? What can we do to reduce the amount of people who are committing violent acts of crime and stealing from shops, from shoplifting, all of that across the board? What are the causal roots of this? Why would more people steal? Why do people commit crimes? What is there a correlation, and what can be done in order to reduce crimes? Are there other countries in the world that have far more robust welfare systems, far more robust social safety networks, where they spend vast amounts of their taxation in order to provide housing, security, safety for the people? And does that result in lower levels of crime? Shock, it does. Wow, the less people who don't have houses, who live on the streets, the more there is crime, and more that there is open drug use, because people who are living on the streets, who don't have the ability to shower, have a lot of trouble maintaining jobs, maintaining resumes, going to work every single day. And when they are living on the streets where it's dangerous, you can also get robbed and raped and beaten up on the street just like anyone else. It's not as if they are suddenly the homeless people are also not going to be victims of that as well. Well, then yeah, you might want to self-medicate. You might want to start trying to deal with trauma that you can't afford to get through mental health services, you can't afford to get through any kind of social safety network, with booze, with heroin, with fentanyl, with whatever you can get your hands on, because that sounds fucking horrible. That, people are always just like pointing the finger at that. It's like, well, yeah, but what do you think you would be doing if you have to wake up on the cold ass street every day, shivering, not being able to sleep properly, never getting over a cold, never getting over feeling sick, always afraid, worried that at any single time, like, do you ever get a nervous feeling when you hear sound in the other room? What about fucking footsteps literally walking beside your face every single time you try to go to bed, in any corner of anywhere, where you're just always worried about whether or not it's going to be another person trying to rob you, beat you, potentially sexually assault you, or it's going to be a cop who's trying to destroy your possessions, tell you to get off the side of the road, or maybe rob, beat you, and sexually assault you. I don't know. But that sounds terrifying. That sounds like it's going to be a really shitty life. Most likely, you'd want to get fucked up. You'd want to just escape it. You'd want to be like, okay, well, this sucks. I'm going to do anything else than actually being in just the stone cold reality of how brutal my life is. But again, we don't think of that. We think of people who are breaking into cars, and they're obviously, it's bad to rob, it's bad to murder, it's bad to kill. Most people, like, you shouldn't have to say that out loud. It's that is that the vast majority of people who are suffering that are done on a much larger scale, a systemic scale or a structural scale. People don't think of that as the same thing. People don't think of wage theft as theft. If a guy walked by you, bumped into you, pickpocketed you and stole $10 out of your wallet or $10 out of your pocket, do you think of that as the same as a boss who didn't pay you a dollar you were owed extra hour for a year's worth? So your boss stole $12 from you for being paid once a month, let's say, over the course of the month, he stole $12 by just shaving off a dollar from your pay by rounding up an hour's time. And so he stole $12 from you. That guy picketed $10 off you. So he stole less money, but that one feels way worse because he took it. He took it out of my pocket. He stole my cash. And in the other case, the boss is doing that to hundreds of people, but he's just like, I'm just rounding up, 50 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 5 minutes here. And then one person gets paid 30 to 40 bucks less than they're supposed to, justifiably, a year, but you don't think about it, whatever. If I do that to 100 people, I get $4,000. It's extra $4,000 for me. They barely notice it. Who has time to be going through all their pay stubs and being like, but I worked X amount of hours and then I have to talk to HR and then I have to fight you on this. You refuse to do it, so maybe I'll have to sue you. I don't have the resources to sue you. You keep getting away with it because you have all the power and resources.
Not see state violence, policies that create poverty/kill, structural violence, institutional violence is very deliberate. Same with panics about crime, shoplifting versus how much corporations steal from every single one of us. It's
true.
It is wild how we have been conditioned.
Yeah, true, Ducko.
To not view violence through policy the same as interpersonal violence. It seems almost innate or human in a way because, if we see one person attacking another person, that is visually striking in a way that, an insurance claim being denied is not. Yet, the outcome is the same. So, especially on a mass scale, there are people out there. I'm saying people out there. There's some people arguing or making the point that there is likely more blood on the hands of that CEO than there is of most world leaders. And it's hard to deny that. To think of just the level of healthcare that has been denied to people, that has a direct impact, clearly, on their lives. Many of them either going bankrupt over it or simply not being able to afford the coverage or not going to get healthcare coverage because they're afraid they may be denied or that they can't afford it, and then dying because of the system that they live under. Now, again, I do want to bring it back to this. This is an issue with the system, not necessarily,
Kill one person and you're a murderer. Kill 100,000 and you're increasing shareholder value. Good last word.
Hey, if you'd like to unlock secret bonus episodes as well as uncensored content, go to patreon.com/The Serfs. This show is produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Puppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Travis McClinton, Trincel, Words Greenwood, with additional support coming from all of these amazing human beings right here.